Good afternoon. The narrative of a country's war experience necessarily encompasses the major trends and events: military campaigns, combat between armies and navies, enemy invasion, the progressive hardships of occupation, drastic changes in lifestyles, cruelty in POW and internment camps, massacres, the destruction of cultural heritage, and the like. I'm not going to do that heavy lifting. I've written several books on the occupation, and Cecilia Garlan has one I've donated to the San Francisco Library. You can read what I've written there. What I shall take up today are sidelights that, because they are sidelights, are not likely to be mentioned in the major works on the war. And because of the subject matter, some of the incidents may be R-rated. I hope there are no minors around here. If there are minors, cover their ears.
Go home. Please go home.
I cover two specific topics: prostitutes in the battle for Manila, and humor as a weapon of resistance. In the battle for Manila in February 1945, prostitutes played two distinct roles. In the Bayview Hotel case, they acted to divert Japanese troops from prospective rape victims. At that hotel, about 200 to 300 women from the Ermita and Malate area were interned by the Japanese, who would go from room to room looking for rape victims. The women tried to devise certain defenses. The young girls were sent to the back of the room and rolled up in carpets when possible. The older women positioned themselves near the entrance and offered themselves to the lust-ridden Japanese soldiers. Often the prostitutes played a part. They called attention to themselves and away from the young girls. Prominent among them were white Russian women from Shanghai who had serviced the high end of Manila's flesh market. The success rate was not 100%. Some girls were still victimized. In one case, the Japanese had difficulty entering a young girl, so they enlarged her vaginal orifice with a knife or a bayonet. Some girls were spared because they were having their monthly periods, and the Japanese did not like having intercourse with menstruating women. The Japanese are very hygiene conscious, and that was unhygienic. In the case of 14-year-old Isabelle Caro Wilson, later a Philippine ambassador to Spain, she used her head in saving herself. She was taken to the Peralta apartments behind the Bayview for the pleasure of an officer who started to fondle her. He asked her if she was dalaga, or virgin. In Tagalog, dalaga is just an unmarried young girl, but in this context, it meant a virgin. Although only 14, she was well developed. And she said she was married and had 3 children. The officer pushed her away and said, I want dalaga. She was escorted back to the Bayview by a soldier who kindly fed her some crackers. When the Bayview Hotel was evacuated prior to demolition, the women were herded to the Rizal Monument, where Japanese troops from Intramuros would come to harass them. The prostitutes and older women had to continue their protective efforts. In Intramuros, the prostitutes played a different role. They plied their trade with the Japanese troops who would give them what they asked for. Dr. Antonio Hisbert, who was attending to refugees at San Agustin Monastery, recounts that if he needed bandages, blankets, or gin for anesthesia, he would simply ask them and they would promptly come up with the desired item. Dr. Hisbert said they were well organized. They even had their own mass. Tuesdays at 11 a.m. at the Franciscan Shrine of the Venerable Third Order. The Franciscans evidently realized that the ladies had to make a living with their very limited inventory of marketable assets and tried at least to keep them connected to God. After liberation, Dr. Hisbert saw some of the same women plying their trade along Calle Raon. They greeted him, and although he might be mistaken for a customer, which would not be good for his reputation, he greeted them back. It was the least he could do for those who had helped heroically during the battle. My second subtopic is humor as a weapon of resistance. The Filipinos never lost their sense of humor during the occupation and often turned it against their conquerors and mocked them with it. Washington Street in Sampaloc, a terminus for carretela routes from Quiapo along España Street, was renamed Mabuhay Street. The drivers in Quiapo gleefully shouted, "Mabuhay Washington! Mabuhay Washington!" which in English means "Long live Washington." A rather pathetic bus service was started called City Bus, and the letters became an acronym, CITYBUS, for "Come immediately, try your best, Uncle Sam." When the sham independence of October 14, 1943 was declared, the people in the streets immediately said, "Independencia, independejo," incorporating the Spanish word for cuckold in the term. The Japanese had the nasty habit of confiscating wristwatches from people on the streets. On stage shows, a man would ask another one in a long-sleeve shirt, "What time is it?" And the man would roll up his sleeve and show a whole armful of wristwatches. This, of course, earned him a call to the Campe Tire military police headquarters in Fort Santiago. Another skid had one asking another, "Sinong hinihintay mo? Whom are you waiting for?" And the answer would be, "Si Uncle." This would earn another call to Fort Santiago. Reportedly, a placard in Spanish was found one morning at the Rizal Monument reading, "Rizal, you are the only Filipino who does not listen to San Francisco radio." Because, of course, he was dead. Somewhere in the background papers, there's a heading, "The Role of San Francisco During World War II in the Philippines." Well, this was the role. It was the principal news of source of short-term news by announcer William Winter. You may have heard of him. A verbal questionnaire went as follows. What did the Spaniards bring us? In Tagalog, religion. What did the Americans bring us? In Tagalog, educación, or education. What did the Japanese bring us? Ración, food rationing. A prize-winning song, Awit sa Paglilingkod sa Bagong Pilipinas, or song to serve the new Philippines, started with the call, "Tindig, akin inang bayan, lahing pili sa silangan. Rise, my motherland, chosen race of the Orient," and ended with the exhortation, "Gumawa, bumuo at magbata. Work, create, and rejuvenate." On the streets, this became "Gumawa, bumuo ng mga bata." Work and make babies, or work and make children. This in a country with a high birth rate. It was this sense of humor that helped people to survive those ghastly times and to mock their oppressive conquerors. Thank you.